This is JD Stovall with UBO Business Services. He is our Director of Production Specialty Products at UBO. JD came to us from the Xerox Corporation to work for UBO, and he's now our leader of the Iridesse product line. So JD's going to walk you through a couple of features of the machine and some important things to know about how you as a designer can set up your press operators for success.
Thank you, Ronnie. I appreciate that. And so let's get to it. I appreciate being here today, and I think a few things that we're going to cover today are going to be very enlightening to you in relation to how design truly does affect the end result that you get and how it comes through the actual press itself. We're going to start here. And one of the first things that we always do when we're starting with a production digital press from a design perspective is wanting to make sure that we have the proper media assigned to the type of design that you're trying to accomplish. And so what that looks like is you want to choose the differences between whether you want to use a textured stock, an uncoated stock, or a coated stock. You also have lots of other choices. I mean, there's millions and millions of different types of papers. But the one thing that's very unique about the Iridesse press is it's one of the only presses in a cut sheet environment that can run a 13 by 47 and a quarter inch banner sheet. Yes, that's right. A 47 and a quarter inch banner sheet. That's a long sheet. And as you can see, we have this table here and we have some other assistants. There's another stabilizer that can go into the end of that table right there to assist with that long, extra long sheet. And some people ask, well, how do you run that long sheet? Well, a lot of it has to do with the air assist that we have embedded inside of the machine. And you'll see as we go through the rest of the machine how we're able to keep registration and completely run those longer banner sheets through here. But one other thing that we can do here, well, there's several other things, but one of the bigger ones is that through this bypass tray, you can run a 28-inch sheet and you can have it duplexed. So you can duplex a 28-inch sheet all the way up to a 400 GSM, which is actually equivalent to an 18 to 20 point sheet, depending upon the manufacturer of paper that you use. So for those of you who don't have a good understanding of what that is, that's a super thick, almost cardboard-like thickness. So very impressive for this machine to be able to duplex that heavy of stock. Moving on inside of this feeder, you also have down below, you have two additional trays here that you can run 1319 out of, up to a 1319 and also 400 GSM, as well as two additional trays that you can see behind me here that are at the bottom of the engine. So what we want to finish with on this particular segment is the biggest thing to know in relation to picking and choosing media is making sure that you're choosing the correct types of media for the types of designs that you're creating. So now let's move on to the engine. So what I want to talk a little bit about mainly today is focus on the inner workings of the main engine of the machine and how the colors actually lay down, because I think that's what most of you are here to learn today. So that's what we want to go over. So first, I'm going to open up these top two doors, which is very nice that we're able to open up these separately. The reason being is we can replace the high density dry ink at any point in time during the run. So if you're running long runs, you can replace ink on the fly. As you can see, we have 6 housings here. The 6 housings this is the only machine on the market today that has 6 colors in line where you can drop down a dual embellishment in one single pass. So you can actually lay in your underlay position, which starts here, moves left to right. You have underlay, your standard 4-color process, and then you have an overlay position. Your underlay position can do a silver, a gold, a white, and it's a high density fluorescent pink. Your overlay can also do the same color, silver, gold, white and pink, but also it can do two additional colors, which is clear and low gloss clear. And we'll talk a little bit about the differences of those here just shortly. So this is a really cool setup because no one else has it. And everybody wants what nobody else can have. So let's jump in real quick to some of the small inner workings of this machine. You get that small inner workings? This is huge, right? So what we want to talk about is how right here, this is all your developer units. About 90+% of all machines on the market that have an embellishment capability actually have to purge their devices prior to switching colors. Why is that important? Well, it's important because you're going to lose about 25 to 30% of your ink every time you purge to change a color. You don't lose any with these. This is a no purge system. The entire developer units come out and you get to swap that with the new colors. So moving on though, what I really want to get to is a couple of things about paper path and then also the imaging belt. So in the paper path, the reason why I want to discuss this with designers, because a lot of people ask, well, why is it important that designers know how the paper path works? Well, I'll tell you why it's important. The reason it's important is because when you go to design a document that has multiple different layers in that document, you want to make sure that they're lining up exactly the way that you've put them down. You want them to be so tight that they sit on top of each other and create that one beautiful image that you designed on your computer. So what we want to be able to do is recreate that on the device itself. And here's how we do that. So if I pull this out a little bit further, what you see here is back here at the very front, towards the front of the machine, if you can get down in here, and then there is actually a head stop. And what a head stop is it's a little bar that raises up and down, and it registers the sheet every time it comes into the machine. Well, why is that important? Well, it's important because sheets can turn side to side. We want it to be exactly straight as it comes through the machine. So what it does is it registers every sheet at the front. It comes into this path. This little guide right here is what we call a slide guide. And a slide guide is this particular mechanism right here moves back and forth 5 inches, consistently shoving the sheet into this edge that's on this side. And that's important because that's how we maintain better than 0.5 millimeter registration. As a matter of fact, on this device, we are consistently averaging about 0.03 millimeters of registration, which is phenomenal. Then you move into your belt feed system, which is air assist. So it's a suction fed system. These are Teflon coated silicone belts. And so they're being sucked down, and so you're able to do a your duplex and never lose your registration front to back. Well, why is that important? Well, it's important because this machine can run up to a 47.25-inch sheet, and it can duplex up to a 28-inch sheet. So when you're wanting to run multiple up, you actually have the ability to do that, and your embellishments hit spot on layer, and never miss a beat. So now what I'd like to talk to you about is the IBT belt. And the IBT belt is the imaging belt. And it's being held in by a very large bar right here, which will slide down. And then we pull this out. And what this gives you the capability of seeing exactly how the image is laid to paper. So when you're laying down from this way, the machine, the actual imaging belt will run right to left, and then it comes back down and underneath, right on top of down here where we had talked about it going into your image. This is your imaging belt right here, or this is your image transfer. So what happens is that this actually lays down in individual colors, and then it mashes your colors together to create your actual image, your total image down in the bottom. The interesting thing about this is the reason why this device was set up this way is because this machine is intelligent enough to know that as you get further in the run, if it's missing, say your light on magenta, it will actually notice and detect the density of magenta in the later run, and it can send a message back here saying, drop more magenta, and now you can get your image corrected actually in run as the machine is going. So why is this important? Well, this is important to a designer for specific reasons. The reasons being is that you can understand that obviously as an underlay, you want it to lay first. Your CMYK will then lay second, and then your overlay that goes on the top of your image lays last. So being able to see this gives you a better visual of what you're actually creating and what the end result will be. Now, I talked a little bit ago about the clear and low gloss clear. And what I want to do is just spend a brief second talking about the low gloss clear because it's a very interesting technique that only this device in the Iridesse can produce. And so the low gloss clear goes into your overlay position. And then what it does is it will actually lay first. So it will lay down first here, then it will come down the IBT belt, and as it passes by, your CMYK will then lay down the way that it's supposed to, and then it'll run down underneath and lay your image. The low gloss clear is used really specifically for textured stocks. And so what you're able to do is lay down a layer of coat on a texture stock to fill all the crevices so that your image doesn't dissipate into the sheet. And so that allows you to have a true 4 or even a 5 color image be easily it just sits on top of the page and gives you a much better fill so that you can actually still see the textures of the paper, but you're not losing any of the actual design or losing any of the quality of the image that you've created. So I just wanted to briefly touch on that because that's something that's very unique to this press that not any other press can create. So with that, and while it beeps at me, we're going to close this up here. We're going to shut this down. And we're going to move to the next stage. Okay, so now we're going to move into our finishing options. And so with the Iridesse press, there is actually quite a few different types of configurations from a finishing perspective. The upside is that most all of the finishing options that you'll see here are also available on the other Xerox CMYK Plus devices as well. So the upside is your finishing can be very similar regardless of the type of device that you have. But we're going to talk specifically about the Iridesse. So right here we start in, this is your insertion module, which is that 6th pick point that I talked about earlier. So we're going to kind of bypass that. But then you move into this module here. And this module is your creaser trimmer unit. And I want to spend just a second here because there's something very unique about this creaser trimmer module. And that is, this is where you get your 2 knife, so your side-to-side trim. And then you also have the creaser function. This actually has what's called a reverse crease option, which means it's creasing from the bottom of the sheet as well as the top of the sheet. So you're getting a true almost score-like crease. And then on top of that, you can actually crease any one sheet up to 5 times on any one sheet up to 5 times. So that's important because typically when you're running books with a very thick cover, you can actually now crease the book on the edges of the spine, and you get a much better looking square fold book off of the end. The other thing is the cutters here are roll knife cutters. What that means is that the sheet is actually cutting as it's running through the machine versus a guillotine, which is more of a chop-like cut. So what you have here is a much cleaner cut and waste disposal system at the bottom. So then you move into your standard booklet maker here, which your booklet maker is obviously standard. You get your saddle stitch. You can actually on this one position the staples to move towards the back of the spine so that you actually can open your book a little bit better and more flat. And then you have down here what is your square fold face trim unit, which this is a guillotine cut for your face trim, but it gives you the best square edge cut. And then the square edge fold gives you a true bound book like finish with 2 saddle stitch staples. Again, that you can reposition depending upon where it is on the machine. Other options that are available are high capacity stackers, just standard finishers, as well as some other production ready type standard finishing devices. 2 new products that have been brought out for this device that are not quite available yet but will be coming are third-party finishing devices that gives you the capability of doing landscape books as well as a couple of other things. But that's something we can get into in another class. So I appreciate you listening on this part, and we're going to move on to the next step. Now we're on to the fiery system, which is your front end that your operator is going to be able to come in to set up and specialize different jobs. And so the one thing that's important is that every document that's sent down from a designer perspective to the operators or however you're moving files within inside of your organization is that you're allowing the operators to know up front that there is a specialty embellishment that's going to be required inside of those PDFs. The reason why it's important that they know that is because here in the fiery system, they have to select those specialty colors to be able to put down what you've put into your design. So let me show you a little bit. So we go in, and once we apply the specialty color on an over, so your overlay is on the top here, imagine that. And then you have your specialty color that's your underlay is on the bottom. And when you select these checkboxes, you're able to go in and you're able to see exactly what is available inside of your over and under options. And so on the overlay, as we talked about earlier, your overlay is only capable of, it's actually capable of doing every color out there. You can do the gold, you can do silver, you can do white, you can do the new fluorescent pink, you can do clear and low gloss clear. Those are all what are available on the overlay. When you go back to the underlay, you can only do the silver, gold, white, and now the fluorescent pink that has come out. So one thing that I want to point out here is that if your document is set up correctly, the way that you want it to be, to where you know that your underlay is white and your overlay is, let's call it clear, you don't have to do anything but tell your operators to just set the over and under and turn them on. Now, one thing that is very specific to the Iridesse press, and I'm just going to cover this very, very briefly, is that you have the opportunity to have your certain things called out within inside of your document. So, for instance, if you wanted all of your text to be called out as clear on top of what you already have named in your document as clear, then your operator, you would tell your operator that. They would go down and on the overlay, they would have clear and they would select text. And then that would add clear to all the text in your document as well. So just from a recap perspective, you have to make sure that your operators are aware that you're putting specialty colors inside of your design, and then also be a little specific in relation to what it is you would like them to do in accordance with setting up the file from a specialty embellishment perspective.
Well, thank you to JD for coming in and giving us this segment about specifically the Iridesse product. We have a lot of other features that are available in our other lines and our other solutions, and hope you all enjoyed it. JD, thank you so much.
It was my pleasure. It was my pleasure. All right. Thank you so much for having me. I hope you all enjoy the class.